My name is Jones, and today we are looking at governance and leadership. Okay, so this is one of those topics that we discuss in leadership and management in nursing. It is important to study governance in nursing because good governance in nursing refers to the effective and responsible management and leadership of nursing services within healthcare organizations. It involves creating a framework of policies, processes, and practices that ensure high quality patient care, patient safety, and ethical standards that can be upheld. So, good governance in nursing is based on good governance principles to do with nursing profession. So the good governance principles to do with a nursing profession has to do with ethical practice, transparency and accountability, patient-centered care, clinical competence, quality and safety, communication and collaboration, leadership and management, evidence based practice, advocacy, regulatory compliance, and also continuous improvement. So these compose the principles of good governance in nursing. So when you're talking about good governance in nursing, it aligns nursing practice with ethical standards, patient-centered care, quality improvement, transparency, and collaboration. So this is to help ensure that the nursing services are well managed and contribute to the overall success of healthcare organization in providing safe and effective patient care. So that is why you have to learn about good governance and good governance in nursing. Okay, and this is in the topic of leadership and management. Okay, so appreciate what governance necessarily is. We can say governance is the process by which organizations establish their rules and policies and implement or monitor these rules and policies. Good governance has various essential characteristics and can mean different things to different people. So, as a nurse or as a nurse midwife, leaders holding positions of power, okay, you must have a sense of accountability and a sense of carrying out checks and balances if you want to govern successfully. Okay, so good governance in nursing can be looked at as a process by which organizations establish their rules and policies and also implement these rules and also how they will monitor these. So, as nurses holding positions of power, we must have that sense of accountability, okay, which should match up with good governance policies. Okay, so by definition, we need to appreciate the word government also. By definition, we also need to appreciate the term government. We have already appreciated the word governance, okay, and in defining the word governance, we have said a process by which organizations establish their rules and policies and implement and monitor these rules and policies. But now, when we say government, we are simply looking at a group of people that govern or that rule over or that make decisions over a community or a country. So, a government is a group of people that govern, look at affairs of the community or country. So they govern or make decisions, okay, over a community or country. So that is a government. So it sets and administers public policies and exercise executive, political, and sovereign power through customs, institutions, and laws within a state. So when you're talking about a government, it is the administrative body of a country or community that exercises these elements, that is the executive powers, political power, and the sovereign power through customs, institutions, and laws that are within that state. Examples of government may include democracy, monarchy, republic, dictatorship, and many more that we can look at. But most common is democracy, least common is dictatorship. Okay, so we have looked at the term government. Now, how then do we define governance? So we said governance is a process of making decisions and the process by which decisions are implemented. This is just another way of defining governance apart from what the way we defined it in our introduction. So governance in this context can apply to corporate, international, national or local governance as well as the interaction between other sectors of society. So, governance can also be defined as a process of decision making and the process by which decisions are implemented. Okay, so that is how governance can also be defined, that is using different characteristics. Okay, we can say process of decision making, okay, and the process by which decisions are implemented. Then, when we say good governance, this is the process of measuring how public institutions conduct public affairs and manage public resources, and also guarantee the realization of human rights in a manner essentially free of abuse and corruption, and with due regard for the rule of law. Okay, so with due regard for the rule of law. When you're talking about good governance, we as health professionals, we are interested in good governance because as health professionals, we need to develop accountability, we need to develop transparency because all these are going to promote good governance. So when you're looking at the definition of good governance, you are simply looking at the process of measuring how all executive bodies are functioning without infringing on human rights of individuals. A process of measuring how public institutions conduct their affairs and manage the public resources so that there is no abuse. There's no abuse, that is, of human rights. There's no abuse of individuals. So if there's no abuse, there is no corruption. Okay? The people are going to follow the rule of law, which protects these resources that are supposed to be used within our community. Okay, so from good governance, then we can look at the roles of good governance in organizations. So if you have got good governance within your organization, it is going to help minimize the potential for corruption. It is going to help to increase, okay, in the inclusion and ability to benefit from diverse thinking because there is participation in good governance. So it will increase inclusion and ability to benefit from participants, those people that are participating so that you achieve good governance. Okay, so good governance also helps for you to react to the needs of society, both now and in the future. In good governance, you listen from the people, okay? You listen from the structures, you understand their needs so that now you can attend to these needs. So in the health profession, people have to, at the grassroots, at the clinics and the likes, okay, depending on how much a certain disease will affect them, they will draw up their needs for certain drugs. They will draw up their need for a certain service, let's say maternity service and the like. So then if you have got good governance, you are going to react to these needs by providing an ambulance if that is what they need, providing a maternity service center if that is what they need. The roles of good governance is to also provide a framework for managing organizations. So, if at all we need to have a measure or standard of governing, we need to respect the rule of laws. So if you're respecting the rule of laws, then good governance is going to provide a framework that does not infringe, okay, on human rights, that does not allow abuse over individuals within the community. So the roles of good governance is to provide a framework for managing organizations or public affairs. The other role of good governance is that it will identify who can make decisions and act on behalf of the organizations. So it will look at who can make a decision within the community. There is selection, okay, selection of leaders, okay, that are going to make decision over the members of the community. So there are people appointed that should be accountable so that we have efficient and effective services. Okay, so that is what we can talk about the role of good governance. It helps minimize potential for corruption. It will help because there is accountability. It is going to increase inclusion and the ability to benefit from diverse thinking because one of the principles of good governance or good governance is that of participation. It reacts to the needs of society both now and in the future because there is good in good governance, there's good participation, and there's also responsiveness to the needs of the people within the community. It will provide a framework for managing organizations. Why is it providing the framework? Because there are rules and policies that are to be followed when you're running an organization. So, good governance will give out the rules and the policies that are supposed to be followed. And these rules and policies will be used as a measure, okay, as a measure as to whether there is good governance in that organization, in that community. Then it will also help identify who can make decisions and can act on behalf of the organization. Okay, so there's a very important point for us to note that Good Governance Institute believes that good governance is not about ownership, but it's about stewardship. Okay, when I say stewardship, that is, it's about taking responsibility for an organization. Okay, so let us look at characteristics of good governance. What are some of characteristics of good governance? So these characteristics of good governance, we are going to remember them nicely in the mnemonic react P, okay? React P or create P or PACTA. Okay, so these are just a mnemonic. Okay, PACTA, we have good governance. Okay, within this diagram, we have good governance. So for you to have good governance, you need to apply some rule of law. Okay, some rule of law, the laws that are supposed to be respected so that you don't infringe on individuals of the community, okay, infringe on the individuals of the community's human rights. There should be transparency, okay, there should be transparency. There should be consensus, okay, or it should be consensus oriented. So that is within the mnemonic, so packed there. So accountability, okay, each and everything that we are doing in good governance, we are accountable. We make decisions according to the policies that are prevailing at that point. Then there will be effectiveness and efficiency. Okay, so we are going to use resources prudently, because if there is abuse, then the other arm of the government is to arrest those people that are involved in corruption or misappropriation of public funds. Then there will also be equity and inclusiveness. There is equity and inclusiveness because decisions will be made with consultation from the people. The people that we govern are going to be involved. There is responsiveness. When people reach out to the government on the needs, but the needs that they would want to see attended to, as area given, you need an ambulance, you need maternity services, okay, you need child health services. Good governance will ensure that those things are provided to that community so that people will not die unnecessarily. Then the other characteristic of good governance is that of participation. Okay, it's that of participation. So where there is equity, where there is inclusiveness, you see that participation of people is quite high. So talking about characteristics of good governance, we are saying you have to create participation. That is, create P. Or you have to react to people's need. That is P. Government, okay, we have to react to P. You have to react to people's needs. You have to react to what people are telling you out there. So create P is just a mnemonic or a way of remembering these characteristics of good governance. Let us appreciate these characteristics one by one of what necessarily we entail by each of these characteristics. So participation is the first one that we are going to look at as a characteristic of good governance. So, participation of others in the process of governance is the key characteristics or characteristic of good governance. Participation has an important step for mobilizing people to participate in the decision making process. So, as people are participating, you see that they will help in they'll bring different experience and help in the decision making process. The people that are facing the problem within the community actually have got good ideas on how they can solve the problem, and the the people that might be in leadership, but yet they are not so much attached to the problem that is happening within the community. So those that are close to the problem are going to help in making decision because they will understand their problems better. It can also it can be direct or indirect, but participation needs to be informed and organized. If we talk about participation as one of the characteristics of good governance, we need to we don't need to have an haphazard kind of participation. We need to shade it in a way that each and every, for example, month, each and every, for example, quarter, there are certain problems that we need to attend to within the communities. Okay, each and every, let's say, week, there is a day that is allocated for people to bring out the issues that they are facing within their community. So this community that we are talking about, because we're talking about good governance to do with the healthcare, we are looking at the governance of all healthcare institutions. So apart from governance of all healthcare institutions, we also have our partners who are our patients that can also participate in giving out solutions to the problems that we are facing. Okay, so they can participate. So when you're talking about participation as one of the characteristics of good governance, we're saying it can be either indirect or direct, and it needs to be an informed one. Okay, the the example that I can give also here is when we are having immunization. So people within the community participate, okay, by bringing their children for immunization to different centers. Okay, so other ministries also participate by encouraging members within their ministry, members within their institutions, members within their organization to participate on some of these campaign or eliminating these diseases that exist within our community, and they are quite preventable through immunization. Okay, so the aim and objective of political rights would be fulfilled by the greater participation of the people in society. So, if a lot of people are allowed to participate in decision making, you'll find that you will not make decisions that people start reacting negatively to. Okay, so people will react negatively to something if at all they have not been allowed to participate in the making of this decision. When they are allowed to participate, so they will live with the negativity, okay, or the burden that they have to face when such a decision has been made, and they will understand the implications of the decisions that have been made. Okay, participation here, we're looking at the legal framework. It will represent the rule of law, which will ensure impartiality in terms of participation. So, as much as we allow uh, our the people that seek our services, okay, there is need for the rule of law to be respected in participation. Okay, the decision making process of governance also should be protected. Okay, when you are a leader, you don't just make out decisions, you allow people to participate, and you follow the rule of law and proper channels on how people can participate. Okay, so from there we can look at consensus orientation. Okay, good governance has got also consensus orientation as one of the characteristics. So the boardroom, a conference room meeting is an appropriate forum for hosting robust discussions and debates. Some of the most heated debates will result in the best decisions. As representatives from many different walks of life, they will come together with varying perspectives. Good governance means securing agreement from these discussions. Consensus orientation or consensus oriented decision making has to take on board the different needs and perspectives of these diverse groups to deliver a broad consensus that will serve the best interest of communities in the companies. Okay, so consensus reached, you look at the number of people that would, for instance, suggest a certain decision that it should be made in order to uh, in order to remove or eliminate the problem that they are facing. So you look at that consensus, and then technocrats can also be involved to see how best that can work, and then you make the decision. But it's important to have a consensus oriented decision making. Okay, so the third characteristic of a good governance is accountability. Accountability is a crucial characteristic of good governance. Boards of directors are accountable to groups and individuals affected by their decisions, including their shareholders, stakeholders, vendors, employees, and the general public. So, in good governance, you need to know that each and every decision that you are making, you are accountable for those decisions. This is to allow prudent use of resources. Okay, so from accountability, To do with accountability, we are also looking at transparency, okay, as one of the characteristics of good governance. So transparency and the rule of law go hand in hand with the accountability. Transparency is one of the core values of good governance, and it both drives and it is going to also help evidence accountability. So, it is important to have transparency in good governance. Okay, so transparency and accountability move hand in hand. When you talk about transparency, here follow the rule of law. Okay, you follow the rule of law so that you are accountable. So for you to be held accountable or for you to make accountable choices, you need to follow the rule of law so that you are not held accountable for wrong decisions. Transparency is allowing for inclusion, participation. Okay, so transparency is one of those core values of good governance, and it both drives and evidences accountability. Okay, so from there, then transparency, what we can necessarily say about transparency as the fourth characteristic is that good corporate governance requires the records and processes that are transparent and available to shareholders and stakeholders. Financial records should not be inflated or exaggerated. Reporting should be present to shareholders and stakeholders in ways that enable them to understand and also interpret the findings. So, for whatever drugs that you order, okay, from let's say the province, whatever drugs that you order from the district, okay, there is a recording, there is a system of recording the usage. And after the usage, you send back the documentation so that when you are called to we are called to when you're called to examine or to monitor how you are using the resources that have been sent, you are not found wanting, okay, because of abuse or because of suspicion of corruption. So transparency here requires good documentation, okay, so that your report card is clean. Okay, so transparency is the fourth characteristic of good governance. So, transparency means that stakeholders should be informed of key corporate contacts and told who can answer questions and explain reports if necessary. Corporations should provide enough information in their report. Yeah, so corporations should provide enough information in their reports so that leaders get complete view of the issues. So you find that people at the province, people at the district, they know everything that is happening at your center. They know everything that is happening at your hospital, looking at the records. Okay, so if there is transparency in your record, they are confident in the information that you are giving them. That everything is moving on well. So corporations should provide enough information. If you are cooperating, then you provide enough information on your dealings at your center. Okay, so the fifth characteristic of good governance is responsiveness. Responsiveness has a basic necessity of administration, which can motivate the interrelationships between administration and people. It requires sufficient services to the people within a specific time. A timely response to the unexpected is crucial. With cooperation, that practice good governance, usually able to prioritize swift and honest communication with shareholders and the stakeholders. Then The sixth characteristic of good governance is equity and inclusiveness. Each board of elector or each board director or manager has an equal seat at the board table. Each director can and should use their voice to share their experiences, opinions, and philosophies to enhance and broaden discussions. No one should feel left out or that their views have less meaning than others. So that way you're promoting equity and inclusiveness. Then the seventh characteristic of good governance is rule of law. Important characteristic of good governance is the rule of law. It needs a fair legal framework to establish the rule of law in a society. Rule of law ensures impartiality, which helps to protect human rights, particularly who's most marginal in a society. Most marginal in our society concerning health can be children, pregnant mothers, okay? It can be those that are differently abled. So the rule of law should ensure impartiality, which can help protect the human rights. Then the other thing we can talk about to do with rule of law as characteristic of good governance is that the independent judiciary system also should have impartial nature, and the incorruptible police force are the key elements to ensure that the rule of law is being followed. So, rule of law is the seventh characteristic of good governance. That is for our discussion. It is the seventh. Okay, there's no they say there's no um, arrangement of chronological importance as to which one should come first. So the eighth characteristic of um, good governance is strategic vision. Okay, one of the primary responsibility of board of directors is strategic planning, which includes the organization's mission, vision, and value statements. Strategic planning leads boards to understand where the corporation is going and how it will get there. So, good corporate governance requires a robust planning process, incorporating action plans, budgets, operating plans, analysis, reporting, and much more. So, these are the things that are going to promote good governance, good corporate governance by ensuring that there is robust planning within the process. Okay, action plans are put in place, budgets are put in place, and also operation planning are put in place. The strategic plan holds board members accountable for their decisions and for monitoring their goals. Strategic planning also includes risk management and protecting the company's reputation. Okay, so those were the eight characteristic principles of good governance. Okay, those were the characteristics of good governance. The eight characteristics of good governance. So the last one that we have just discussed on the characteristic of good governance is, or it has to do with the strategic vision. Okay, and the mnemonic to remember these characteristics is using React P or Create P. Okay, so React P has to do with responsiveness, inclusiveness, that is for inclusiveness, that is equity and inclusiveness, okay, accountability, transparency. So all those are the characteristics of good governance. Now, let us appreciate the principles of good governance. To appreciate the principles of good governance, the mnemonic of choice is high solo. Like hi, you are greeting, hi solo. So these are the principles of good governance. Okay, so Each and every letter here is representing something within this discussion. So, letter S is for selflessness. Selflessness is a principle of good governance. Holders of public office should act solely in terms of public interest and not self interest. They should do act in solely on public interest. Then we have integrity. So, holders of public office must avoid placing themselves under any obligation to people or organization that might try inappropriately to influence them in their work. So, as a principle in good governance, you need to have integrity. So, people in these offices also should not act or take decisions to gain financial or other material benefits for themselves, their family, or friends. So, from integrity, we also have objectivity as one of the principles of of good governance. Okay, so holders of public office must act and take decisions impartially, fairly, and on merit, using the best evidence and without discrimination or bias. So, objectivity is one of the principles of good governance. Then, from objectivity, we have number four, which is openness. Holders of a public office should act and take decisions in an open and transparent manner. Information should not be withheld from the public unless there are clear and lawful reasons for so doing. So, from openness, then we have honesty as a principle of good governance. Holders of public office should be truthful. Okay, so with all honesty, you need to save the people within your community. Then the 60th and probably the last principle in our high solo of good governance principle is leadership. Holders of public office should exhibit these principles and treat others with respect. They should actively promote and robustly support the principles and challenge poor wherever it like occurs. So they must robustly support the principles and challenge poor where it occurs. So leadership here is the sixth and the last principle of uh, good leadership. Okay, so in this lesson, we were looking at good governance. So, in looking at good governance, the last component that we have looked at has to do with principles of governance, which we can remember as high solo. H for honest, I for integrity, S for selflessness, O for openness, okay, O for objectivity, and L for leadership. So these are the principles of good governance. As a so as a person in public office, you're supposed to be selfless. As a person in public office, you need to have integrity. As a person in public office, you should have openness in the way you handle affairs of the community. As a person in a public office, you need to show leadership. So you need to show honest, integrity, you should be selfless, openness, objectivity, and leadership. So that is the last part that we looked at. And then we also looked at the characteristics of good governance. Okay, so in remembering the characteristics of good governance, we used a different mnemonic which is React P. Okay, So React P or Create P, these are the mnemonics that we used. We also use the mnemonic Pacta, whichever you find easy, because good governance as should have the characteristic of where people follow the rule of law. Good governance should have the characteristic that allows transparency. Good governance should have a characteristic that should allow consensus orientation. Good governance should have the characteristics of people being accountable, or it should have characteristic of accountability. Good governance should have characteristic of efficiency, okay, and effectiveness. Good governance should have the characteristic of equity and inclusiveness. Good governance should have the characteristic of responsiveness. When people are happy with what is happening within the governing body, they respond to that. So they can respond positively or negatively, but it's important to receive feedback. Then, good governance should have participation. Okay, the people that we are ruling need to participate so that we can attend to their needs accordingly. Okay, so from there, then in our introduction, we also looked at the roles of good governance. So the roles of good governance, we can remember them nicely if we appreciate the characteristic of good governance. But some of the roles of good governance that we discussed is that they will minimize the potential of corruption because we have rule of laws. They will increase inclusion and ability to benefit from diverse thinking. And also, is that good governance is going to provide a framework for managing organizations. And also, so good governance should also identify who can make decisions and can act on behalf of the organization. So the people that we put in power become accountable. The people that we put in power should be transparent. So the roles of good governance is that of minimizing corruption, increasing inclusion, okay, reacting to the needs of our people, providing a framework, okay, through policies and the rule of law, and identifying those that can be put in decision making. So, in the introduction, we also looked at um, the definitions of good governance, of which you said is a process of measuring how public institutions conduct public affairs and manage public resources, and also guarantee the realization of human rights in a manner essentially free of abuse and corruption, and also with due regard for the rule of law. So, apart from defining good governance, we also define the term governance as a process of decision making, okay, by which decisions are implemented within our community. Then we also defined the term government, okay, as a group of people that govern a community or a group of people that looks at the affairs of a community. So that is the um, definition of government. Otherwise, apart from that, in our introduction, we said governance is a process by which organizations are going to establish their rules and policies and also implement and monitor these rules and policies. So, this has been a discussion on governance and leadership in nursing. So it's important you appreciate each and every part of the discussion that we have had so that you can understand this fully. From me, I'm saying thank you and keep studying.